Hey everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book blogger behind Utopia State of Mind, and today I'm going to bring you my August wrap up. So before we get into it, I would just like to say that at the end of August, at the beginning of September, I saw a lot of discourse about reading shaming, and specifically about reading shaming for like reading too much, I guess, whatever that means. And so as someone who gets that comment a lot, and not, maybe not in a judgy way, who even knows, I don't know. I just wanted to talk a little bit about it because I think that looking at numbers alone, it's very difficult, and I've tried to be pretty transparent with you all and kind of on all my social media about my own mental state and my mental journey and kind of like my emotional mindset when it comes to reading. And so for me, and I think for everybody, when you look at a number about how many you've read or how many, whatever that number is, high, low, medium, average, whatever that means, you don't know anything really else. So you don't know how many books you read, like not how many books you read, you know that. You don't know like the quality of the books you read, if you really love them. You don't know if it was a mediocre month, a good month, a bad month. Without knowing a person, you don't know if this is above average, below average. You just don't know any of those things. And so this idea to judge based on a number that there's basically no context to, on a principle level, doesn't make any sense to me. That's like if I told you, like, oh, I gave this movie a 5. You don't know if it's 1 to 10, you don't know if it's 1 to 5. Like, you don't know how good that is. Do you know what I mean? And so, that's one aspect. And I think the other aspect, which I tried to address on TikTok when I got comments about, oh, like, you read so much, how did you read so much? And I think those comments were generally well-meaning, so I was really happy to explain them. And so I filmed a whole video. I'll try to link it below if I can figure out how to link one specific TikTok. But I filmed a whole video with 5 easy kind of quick reading tips that you could do to incorporate reading more into your lifestyle. And I could do a video actually with that more in depth because it was really hard for me to condense it all into like, I don't even know how long that video was. But I did a follow-up video where I also then talked about like the behind the scenes, I guess, of things you don't see in my reading wrap-ups and like my reading persona, I guess, which is basically just like existential dread, reading as a coping mechanism, reading as a sense of escapism in these times where everything is so uncertain and stressful. And I don't know about anybody else, but I can guess these couple last years have been like ridiculously difficult. I don't know. I try not to talk too much about my like actual personal life and talk more generally about my broad mental spectrum. But the last 3 years have been the hardest of my life probably. I thought that like 2019 was going to be the most difficult year, and so 2019 emotionally and mentally, I guess. I was going to say emotionally, but not mentally, but no, both were like really just very difficult for me. And I definitely used reading as a coping mechanism, and you can kind of see in my stats, that's when it starts to go like way up. And basically I used it as a coping mechanism, and then I was like, oh, okay, 2020 though, like that will be much better. And in the first couple months it was like, it was going okay. And then March 2020, and I liked this tweet that Margot Wood made on Twitter where it was like, it still feels like March 2020. And it does to me. It feels like I'm in some long, like, fever dream, essentially. And so then I feel like 2020 was like, 2019. Let me take that over for you. And then 2020 was really bad. Right? And so, really bad on a global level, on a familial level, on a personal level, like, just bad all over. All over. I know we make these jokes about how, like, oh, I got to sit inside a home and read all day and stuff like that. And yeah, okay, I was able to do that too, but, like, the emotional stress and mental trauma, and then all of the, like, hate crimes against Asian people in general, related to 2020. It just, yeah, that was 2020. And then 2021 so far has also been really hard. Like, everything all the burnout, all of the emotional trauma, like everything like that is still rolling on, you know, no break. And yeah, so I just feel like, I mean, I guess that's why to me it doesn't really make sense to judge that or like compare about reading, because also I'm generally a very fast reader. I've kind of always been. And so, I don't know. This whole PSA is just like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't judge people based on how much they are or aren't reading. As I said in the TikTok, like to me it is much more important that I find quality books that I love in a month, and less about like, oh, I have to read as many books as I possibly can so that I can like read whatever 305 million books in a year. I don't even know how many books I've read this year. I will go check that for you. I'm back. I checked. I've read 319 books so far. There's a problem with my Goodreads where it's not showing some books, and I hopefully will fix it by the end of the year. But my point is, last year, at the end of 2020, I was like so close to 365, and I was kind of like, ooh, do I push myself? And then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, this is just a number. At the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to push myself to read that at the end of the year. Whereas now you're looking at 2021, it's September, 319 already, like I will probably hit 365. And it's just kind of a testament to the fact that the numbers aren't as important as kind of the story beneath the numbers, I guess. In general, I think that's a pretty true statement for like the world. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about that before, because I do feel like I read a lot and I get that comment a lot, and I don't want to give off like any false perceptions about me, my mental or emotional state, like any of those things. I don't want to do that. I just want to stress, obviously, that everyone's reading journey is extremely personal to them, and we're all on different paths. So, without further ado, we will actually go into my August wrap-up. I read 35 books in August. I've been reading multiple books at a time, and yes, okay, that's definitely probably one of my tips, I guess, to read more, but I can't. Like, I don't know if I will continue to do this the rest of the year. It happened that I was doing a few buddy reads at the same time, and also reading like books on my own, and reading romance books before bed, because that's like my mental comfort zone. Listening to audiobooks, obviously, when I'm like washing the dishes. So it ended up happening way more than in any other month, but I don't know if I'll continue. Like, I have a few buddy reads I want to do for September, like Fire with Fire, and I want to read Vicious and maybe also Vengeful, and yeah, I don't know if I will do that. I don't know how I'll organize my reading in the future. I'm also rereading a few books which I didn't like really include in my calculations, so I don't know what will happen in September. So I guess we're waiting to see what will happen. Of the 35 books, 29% of them featured queer main characters. This is important to me. I don't like, in my tally or in my mental calculations, I don't count if it's like a queer side character only. For me, it's very important that it's a queer main character story. Queer side characters are super cute, super cinnamon roll, I mean, mostly. But for me, it's important when I'm doing these like representation counts in my mind that they're for main characters. I read 60% characters of color in my 35 total. So I'm pretty happy with that, because I'm very close to my targets, which is always 33% and 50%. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that. I guess 12 times, because 12 months. So I'm actually really happy with that. Mentally, how do I feel? As I said, since I was reading so many books at various times, at one time, but like at various times during my day and stuff, I feel mentally exhausted, because even though I felt like August was one of those months where when I was looking back on my spreadsheet, I was kind of like, huh? I read that in August? It just feels like a fever dream. That tweet resonated with me on a deep level. It just feels like if you told me, oh, you read that, you know, in July, I'd been like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So for me, I've lost all track of time. I never really had it before. I don't have it now. And so, yeah, I just feel mentally kind of burnt out. And so that's why I'm not really sure how I'll approach it for September. I know you hear the same like thing always, how I want to read less. I would like to read less. I was briefly reminiscing on that month where I read 25 books, and I was like, those were the good old days. But anyway, for the month of August, I read a bunch of books I loved. So quality, like, it was there. Some sequels that I really loved were Redemptor. I really enjoyed Brave Bear, but at the end I wasn't really sure where it was going to go. And at the end also, I think I talked about it in a few other videos. At the end I was also not sure if there would be a sequel, because even though I was like, there has to be a sequel, there wasn't really one on Goodreads, and so it was kind of was like, who knows? But I ended up reading Redemptor and I loved it. It was like, I think it's my favorite of the two, and I think what was my favorite characteristic of Redemptor was that there's this part of the book where your kind of deepest fears and insecurities and doubts are kind of reflected back at you. And so that kind of mental struggle of the main character to kind of handle what it means to be a leader, what it means to be, you know, a friend, all of these different things, and also having those like thoughts come to you and kind of plague your dreams, your thoughts, you know, everything. Just felt really relatable, and I think that that vulnerability was something I don't really see too much in like fantasy series where main characters are sort of thrust into leadership. I think we get a lot of portrayals of main characters who were kind of always meant to be a leader, or, you know, always wanted to like rise to the occasion. But I think that we need to talk more about people who are thrust into these positions of power and never really expected it. That's also what I loved about A Dragon Bird in the Fern. So that's one of the reasons why I really loved Redemptor. The other sequels that I really loved was Cazadora. Cazadora is a sequel to La Bizzona. I felt the same way about Cazadora as I did to La Bizzona. I felt like in La Bizzona, I say this all the time, I felt like you get this opinion or this vibe of what's gonna go on, and then it just kind of changes. And you're like, oh, okay, cool, I got that. And then it changes. And so that's how I felt about Cazadora. And it was so fabulous because at the end of La Bizzona, I'm like, where will this go, right? Like, what's gonna happen? And then Cazadora did not fall into this second book syndrome. Also, I swear that I thought that this was duology, but it's going to be a trilogy. So as soon as I realized that, I was like, oh, okay. And so Cazadora, yeah, it doesn't fall into the second book syndrome. There's so much action, so many revelations. It just is so fabulous, and I think if you really love La Bizzona, you would really enjoy Cazadora. The next one is The Devil in the Device, or Devil in the Device. I can't remember if there's a "the" in front of it or not. This is a sequel to Goddess and the Machine, and this is another one where I was kind of like, where is this going to go? And then Devil in the Device totally got me. Like, I struggle to figure out how much I can say without spoiling it. But I loved how Devil in the Device talks about this human, other, like, sci-fi feel. So basically, like, wondering if, you know, this line between sci-fi and machine, and I feel like sci-fi, like, it felt a little bit post-humanist in this feeling about kind of, like, wondering, in these technological societies, and obviously the world for Goddess and the Machine and Devil in the Device is also so different than what we know of. It's like this one where technically it's in the future, but there have been kind of this breakdown of society, so in some ways they're very technologically advanced, but in other ways not. And so it was interesting to see this manipulation of that, and this manipulation of themes and characterization and identity all kind of mixed together. As I said, I don't want to spoil it, so I can't really like talk too much more about it. But if you really, for me, Devil in the Device stood out for this thematic exploration, and that's why I liked it so much. And then the other ones I really loved were some YA ones. So the first one is The Jasmine Project. I knew I was going to love The Jasmine Project. I need more adopted representation in my life. The Jasmine Project. And so what I also loved is that while there's a place for stories about finding your origin and struggling with that, and like, I need those stories, I also needed this story. I needed this story about an adopted girl who, that's part of her life, that's part of her identity, but she also does like everything else, because I feel like we see all of these portrayals about one or the other, and I really loved this kind of middle ground character. And I really loved how it didn't end up like, I loved how it ended up being very much centered on the title, The Jasmine Project. So it wasn't necessarily about like the dating show or like a dating, it wasn't called The Dating Project or whatever like that. Like her family and her family and her family's goals are very much like, we want Jasmine to feel like she has the worth that we all know she has. And for me, that resonated so deeply, like with me as a person. And all of her kind of inner dilemmas, all of that stuff, like that resonated so much with me. And so I ended up like loving The Jasmine Project for reasons I didn't expect when I picked it up. The next one is A Clash of Steel. This is a queer Asian retelling of Treasure Island. It is just everything I wanted, essentially. I've never really read Treasure Island. I also don't even know if I know anything about Treasure Island. But this whole remix series has been absolutely fantastic, and A Clash of Steel and So Many Beginnings are perfect series starters for this series. A Clash of Steel had this great mix between atmosphere, like detailed, nuanced, you can kind of smell it and feel it and taste it atmosphere, with also action and pacing. It was just so fabulous. The character dynamics made me just like melt inside. I just loved everything about A Clash of Steel so much. And I've loved C.B. Lee's other books in the past, the Not Your Sidekicks like series essentially. And so I kind of knew that C.B. Lee has a way with characters, but seeing it in this historical fiction-esque setting just like, it just reaffirmed my love of these characters. The next one is Bad Witch Burning, which, Bad Witch Burning was intense emotionally and just like intense in general because there are ghosts, and the ghosts are like, I don't know how I feel about them. I read a lot of spooky books in August, and also in September. I'm starting it off. I'm a huge scaredy cat. I don't know what has happened in the universe to make it so that I'm reading all these spooky like ghost books. It just, I don't know. I don't know, but it's happening. Bad Witch Burning has all of these like really gritty, intense emotional experiences, and it also talks about poverty, talks about racism, it talks about all of these different things. But at the end of the day, it also talks about needing to see the people around you and to choose the people who choose you, to allow help and allow support when you need it, and to like recognize that in other people. And that theme, it just like pierces my heart essentially. It is so emotional, and that specific emotional character journey, like despite all the action and stuff, that is the reason why I love Bad Witch Burning. This character journey about looking at that, and reliance and self-reliance and support systems that fail, like all of those things were so good. It was like a book where I felt like I had been wrung out by the end, emotionally wrung out, but in like the best way possible. The next one is Iron Widow. Okay, I knew I was going to love Iron Widow, and I do love Iron Widow. I've said multiple times on social media that Iron Widow's characters have made me soft shell crab level soft. That's like my new trademark. I just love them so much. I love them so much. They are just like, we have characters who want to burn the world down, and you're like, yes, I want to burn the world down. Let's go. Get in the car, we're going. Like, I love that character type. I love that ambition, that drive. And to see it also in a YA heroine, like, yes, I love it. I've talked so much about how much I want more ambitious, almost ruthless, bloodthirsty girls who are like ready to give it all because that's what they want. And especially in this dystopian sci-fi society that basically is just like, you're dirt. And then she's just like, you want to say that again? Basically that. But then also like super soft cinnamon roll side characters as well. Like all of these characters just get me. It is fiercely feminist in the best way possible. I just, man, it's just like one of those worlds that you just want to like get into, basically to start a revolution. Like it is just so nitty gritty, like so atmospheric, that I love it. I loved it. I basically had to force myself to read other books so that I wouldn't finish this one. Like, that's how much I love this book. The next one is It All Comes Back to You. I really loved I Hope You Get This Message because it was like a sci-fi, oh my god, the world might be ending kind of scenario, but so firmly rooted in character dynamics and character development that I knew I was going to be super excited for It All Comes Back to You. I got these mixed up in my head. It All Comes Back to You. And I loved it. It made me cry, the ending. Like, I basically found the author on Instagram and I was like, the ending made me cry. ... It was just so, the characters in it was so amazingly nuanced, so amazingly flawed, relatable, endearing, like all of those different things. It was just like one of those books where you simultaneously see yourself in a character, want to shake the character, and also want to cry, like all of those different things in one specific moment. I say one specific moment because I wanted to say one specific moment, but it's not. It's just like a pile of domino effect moments where you get to know the characters so well and you get to like inhabit their hearts, if that makes any sense. It was just, the characters in this one totally swept me away. They were amazing. It's a contemporary about like second chance romance, which is also like my favorite trope basically of this year. That's my trope of the year. It has overruled everything. And yeah, just about forgiveness and love and family and just like, I get so emotional thinking about it. I'm so emotional now reviewing it, and I just need everyone to read it. And the final one is The Bones of Ruin, which threw me for a loop, okay? I saw it in NetGalley ages ago, and at first when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's a really fun, beautiful cover. Like, all of that fire, I'm here for it. And then I saw it a couple of weeks later, and I was like, wait, is that a person of color on the cover of this book? And it was. And I was like, oh. And then I thought, wait, are they on a tightrope? And yes, they are. So this was like kind of like, okay, it's an African tightrope, like, is it tightrope dancer? Whatever, an African tightrope performer person. Okay, that's really cool on its own. Then you add in, okay, but also she can't die. And like, I've been searching for old guard vibe books ever since I finished, and it's like, bing! And then also though, there's a cult, like a doomsday maybe cult involved too. It was one of these books where it kept like making me think and making me surprised the entire time, and there's a competition, like all of these different things. For me, I think the best way to describe it was kind of like, had a Ace of Shades kind of feel meets Caraval-esque in the like competition and this kind of almost fantastical world building. But it also had like, what is it called? Like that book where, Midnight's Children, that book where everyone is born at this certain time and they all have these like magical skills. That's not actually what's happening in The Bones of Ruin, but that's the vibe that it gave me, kind of like Midnight's Children. So it's like, is it Midnight's Children? Whatever. It's that book vibe then meets Ace of Shades. And then, I don't know, it really kind of struggles to find a good comps for it and a good description of it. But basically, if any of those three things I mentioned resonates with you, then please read The Bones of Ruin, because it was fantastic. It's the beginning of a series. It's a chunky book, but it is so worth it because there are a lot of things happening. There are a lot of things happening. There's a lot of death and blood and healing and just like a lot of things. Also about feeling like your origin is kind of being hidden from you and needing to find that out, and that kind of struggle. It just is so fabulous. It is something that I would recommend so highly, especially if you love all of those things, or if you loved any of the books I mentioned. Please check it out. So that brings me to the end of my August wrap up. It's been a long video. I hope that you're okay. I'm doing okay, I guess. And I'm excited for what September brings. I already realized that I forgot a bunch of books on that TBR, so that's fun. Not. And yeah, I'm just like mentally exhausted and also very warm right now. And yeah, I'm gonna end this now, and we will see you in the next video, hopefully in my September wrap-up video. And yeah, I hope that you all have a great month. Read as much or as little as you want. Just make yourself happy at the end of the day. We need to remember that for a lot of us, reading isn't our job. And so it's important that we, you know, reading sparks joy, sparks our inner joy. I will see you in the next one. Have a great time and enjoy your day.